Okay, looks like it's 6 o'clock. I'd like to call to order, good evening, everyone, first off. I'd like to call to order the October 8th, 2020 Atlas Township Zoning Board of Appeals to order. It is now 6 p.m. I'd like to have a roll call of the board members. I'll turn it on.
Bill Marshall,
This is Lawrence Smith, present.
Jay Sandler,
Present.
Eric Sant,
Here.
Tony Spina,
I'm here.
Robert DeWitt,
Here.
Bill Marshall.
Here. Can you hear
I'm
me?
ready.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
I want to remind everybody that since we're on a conference, video conference, let's try to make sure we don't talk over everybody. Speak one at a time. Next, we need to approve tonight's agenda, and I'd look for a motion to approve it or any request to add additions to it.
I'll make a motion that we revise the agenda as presented by adding 1.1 stating Robert Davis. Add that to the agenda, and I'll make a motion to approve it at that time.
There's support for that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. And need a roll call vote? I don't think we can hear you, Pauline.
There you go. Jay Sandler,
Yes.
Eric Sant,
Yes.
Tony Spina,
Yes.
Lawrence Smith,
Yes,
Robert DeWitt.
Yes. Motion passes. Okay. The first case on the agenda tonight is case number 20-1. The applicants are Paul and Laura Hubler. Hopefully I said that right. The parcel address is 1950 Cirrus, Leonard, Michigan, 48367. The parcel number is 05828251009. Parcel size estimated at 11.3 acres. The zoning is suburban farms, SF. Excuse me. The applicant seeks a dimensional variance from the Township of Addison Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, Article 4, 4.21.2B of the Addison Township zoning ordinance. The applicant requests a dimensional variance for the placement of a 70.5 by 40 by 26 high height accessory structure completely in the front yard, 4.21.2B. Article 4, Section 4.21.2B, accessory building in the A, R-E, S-E, and S-F districts. Unless specifically provided for otherwise elsewhere in this ordinance, accessory buildings in the A, R-E, S-E, and S-F district shall be subject to the following regulations. An accessory building located in the R-E, S-E, or S-F district shall meet the minimum yard setback requirements of the district in which the accessory building or structure is located and shall not be located in the front yard. Okay, Mr. Hubler, can you confirm that this is the variance you are asking for? Hello?
Mr. Hubler, can you hear us?
Mr.
Everyone, I'm Paul and Laura
Hello?
Hubler's attorney, he asked me to join. And do we see Mr. Hubler?
I
There he
can
is.
see him.
Yes, he's moving. It looks like he's talking, but it looks
Yes.
like
Can you hear me?
we're not hearing.
Mr. Hubler, can you hear us?
No, I'm not. Yes,
It looks like his microphone is on, but I don't hear anything.
yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. I asked you a question. Can you confirm that the variance that I recited, the variance request that I recited, is that what you're looking for?
Yes,
Okay.
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can the rest of the board hear him?
Yes.
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 Great. Okay. The next step in our process here is for the applicant to briefly address the ZBA on the variance issues and the relief he's requested. Can you give us some background to what you're looking for?
Or the reason I'm asking for the variance is that I cannot locate the structure in the back of the house, in the backyard. I have a septic field there. On the other side of the house, when the developer dug the pond here, that's where he put most of the fill. And I was told at that time that would not be a good place to build the house. The only other logical place I can see putting it is an open area that I have designated in the plan that I sent to the township board. That is open. I wouldn't have to take any trees down. And that's the reason I'm requesting that area.
Do we have, do you have any evidence you want to present to the board, the facts and background to it?
I think you were given that previously by us and our attorney.
So, sir, would you like us to? I hope the board. Again, my name is Mark Saki, and I'm Mr. Hubler's attorney. We did submit a supplement to his appeal, which is filed and available for the board to review. I hope that the board has reviewed it. If not, I would be happy to summarize. It did set forth what we believe the applicable law is, as well as set forth why we believe that Mr. Hubler, Laura, and Paul, their application meets that law. It also attached 2 exhibits, which I hope the board has reviewed. One is a resolution of his homeowners association, which is really a formal resolution whereby the homeowners association stated that they approve of this this variance and the construction of the garage in front of his house. I know previously he submitted some letters, but this is a more of a formal resolution from his neighbors. Of course, all his neighbors, just like everybody else, have been provided with notice of the hearing, and I don't believe that anyone here is present to object to it. Second is another exhibit which Mr. Hubler put together himself, which includes pictures of other houses within the district, which also appear to have garages in the front of their house, and those places those owners appear to not have attempted to go through the formal process, which Mr. Hubler very responsibly did to get a variance, and they do not appear to be having any negative consequences as a result. So I would ask the board to review both of those documents And if the board would like me to describe, I don't want to, take up everybody's time, but if the board would like me to briefly describe what we wrote in our supplement to his appeal, which again sets forth the law and the facts, I would be happy to discuss that as well.
I think we can recognize the fact that you submitted the information for us to consider. I would ask that, if you have a summary other than what you've just stated, to present it to the board, and or any additional items that are not that have not been that are not contained in your written submission. That makes
I
sense?
think, yeah, it does. I think my written submission is pretty comprehensive. Just in 30 seconds or less, I'll just state that under the law, the first test for this an ordinance variance would be the practical difficulties test, which would state that there's practical difficulties which warrant construction of the garage in the front of his property. And Mr. Ubelhor's position is that again, the practical difficulties are that due to the septic field, that he's not able to construct a garage in the back of his property, and also doing so anywhere other than the front would require the destruction and the removal of 75 mature trees. The next step that would have to be analyzed under the law for the variance to be granted would be, would it provide substantial justice, and a lesser relaxation of the ordinance would give substantial justice to them and more consistent with justice of other property owners. And again, I think that this would be the case because, again, his homeowners association would be the people, his neighbors, who would be prejudiced or theoretically damaged in some way by the ordinance or the variance. And again, everyone in the homeowners association was approached, and there was a formal resolution in accordance with the homeowners association's bylaws, which allowed the construction. So therefore, I don't believe there's any evidence of any owners who are at all upset or damaged or harmed in any way by the ordinance. The third step would be if the spirit of the ordinance will be observed and the public safety and welfare secured by the granting of the ordinance. And I think the same thing, that the public safety and welfare would be secured as evidenced by the homeowners association resolution. And then there's some other other steps which four or five other things which kind of are repetitive, whether there's special considerations and conditions, and I hear there are, again, because of the septic field, with the literal interpretation of the provisions, with deprive Mr. Ubelhor of the rights enjoyed by other properties, and again, is evidence of other homes violating the ordinance without any consequences, I think speaks to that. I don't think it's equitable or fair for Mr. Ubelhor to be penalized by going through the proper channels when other homes haven't. And again, I think the other things everyone here can review the last page of our supplement, and the law is kind of and the facts are kind of repetitive to things that I just mentioned. But really, I think the bottom line, which I'd like to impress upon everybody, is Mr. Ubelhor's neighbors, nobody has any objection. No one has complained. And again, we have a resolution that was provided by the HOA, and him putting his garage where the variance would require would frankly be impossible based on the septic field and also because of the 75 trees. So we ask that the board respectfully consider approving Mr. Ubelhor's application for a variance request.
Okay, great. So sounds like you're making your case there. So the next we would want to ask the board members to address any questions to the applicant or you, Mr. Sackman. So that's one at a time. If we could I'll go across the screen as I see it and ask anybody if they have any questions they want to add. I'll start with Jay. I believe you're abstaining from this hearing because you're a neighbor.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if you want to participate with any questions or not. So I'll start with that.
I have no questions.
Okay. So next I see Eric Zenf. If you have any questions for the applicant.
No, I don't have any questions, but one comment I'd like to make, it was referenced that it was posted to all the neighbors back on September the 16th. Is what you, Mark, that's what you're referring to, right? The notice that went out as to this construction, future construction.
Well, what I'm referring to is, I don't remember the date, but the township would have, given everybody notice as to this being on the agenda. In addition, I do understand that Mr. Ubelhor over the past week or so has approached the people in his neighborhood and again informed them of the hearing and asked them if they have objections.
Yeah, I was referring to the notice that went out. Yeah, so, okay, that's the only comment that I want to make. Really don't have any questions. So I'm all done, Chair.
Okay. Tony, you would be next on my screen.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I've gone preliminarily through the 15, I don't know if you can really see that or not, 15 photographs, 19 photographs taken from the street level of various properties in support of this request. I think it's important that we clarify at the beginning that we are not discussing a garage. We're discussing an auxiliary building. Even though Mr. Ubelhor has stated that his intention is to use this building as a garage, it is not a garage we're discussing, it is an auxiliary building. With that said, preliminarily, out of these 19 photographs that were taken from street level, two of them had no address on them, so they didn't add or subtract anything from the application. 4 of them were not in Addison Township at all, and therefore do not add or subtract anything from the application. Several of them included comments regarding the garage being part of their primary residence, which is not the discussion of we're having today. Those also do not add or subtract anything to the discussion. There appears to be one photograph taken, number 15. I assume everybody has these numbered the same way. Number 15, where it does appear that there is a barn used possibly as a garage in front of the home on Brewer Road. But preliminarily, I think there's only one example out of these 19 that could possibly be judged in favor of the application. I am talking to the building department of the township to better understand when this property was built, when the subdivision was made, those kind of questions. That's it.
Okay. The next board member would be Philip Marshall.
At this time, I have no question.
Next board member would be Lawrence Smith. Lawrence, you're on.
I completely understood the presentation by the applicant's lawyer. I can concur and look at those things on my deliberation. I am looking forward to hearing from Mr. Davis before the public hearing. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, I'll wait till Mr. Davis comments and then I'll base my decision on what I've heard and what Mr. Davis has to say. Thank you.
Do any of the other board members have anything they want to add or address after hearing other board members' comments? Jay?
Not at this time, no.
Eric?
No, not at this time.
Tony?
Yes, I'd only like to add, first of all, a thank you to Mr. Uberall for submitting the homeowners association approval of the structure that we had asked him for a couple of months ago. That is very much appreciated. Number two, cutting down trees to building a property in the township where we live is not really a burden. It's to be expected. Number three is part of the application pointed out that the soil conditions were inadequate for building a property that would meet the requirements of the township. We have not yet been provided that data. I think that sums that up.
Is that it, Tony?
Yes, that's it.
Philip, anything to add?
No, I don't.
I got one comment.
Oh, Eric?
Yeah. On the record, I'd like to state that we made this applicant go over and above what other applicants have done in the past by providing documents from the homeowners association as to any objections over and above the standard process of putting out the standard notification from the township if there's any objections within 300 feet of the boundaries. That should be noted. That's all.
Okay, duly noted. Mr. Ubler or Mark Sacken, do you have anything you'd like to add to after hearing the board's comments and questions?
I suppose the only question maybe I would ask of Mr. Ubelar is I'd like. Yes, was someone saying something?
Oh, I was just going to ask if anyone sent back any derogatory comments regarding that letter that went out from the township for building the property.
Sir, you're
muted.
muted.
You're muted.
Bob, you're muted.
You're muted.
I'm not aware of any. Possibly the clerk's office could let us know if there is anything that's been added.
We did not
She's not-
receive any correspondence concerning the case.
Okay.
Were you able to hear? There was no correspondence concerning the case.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I suppose my only question for Mr. Ubelar would be in response to Mr. Spina, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. He pointed out that there's not any official reports regarding the soil not being able to sustain the garage. And I think maybe it would be helpful for Mr. Ubelar to explain or elaborate a little on why he believes the soil would not be appropriate or feasible to place his garage in that location behind this house.
Well, we were told by the developer not to put it there, not consider that spot. So as far as having a soil test done there, we didn't do it. We took the developer's word that it would not be an ideal place to put the house.
The house or the accessory structure?
The house. Or any building for that matter.
Okay. How about the soil samples or soil conditions where the accessory structure is to be built? Has that been reviewed?
I didn't have any there. No.
Okay. So are you asking us to rely on the builder's recommendation for the house soil samples that should apply to the accessory structure?
Any building put there.
It's loamy and soft and
It-
always
it's-
waterlogged.
It's loamy and soft and always waterlogged. I wouldn't build anything there.
Okay. All right, I'll ask the board members one more time if they have any other questions or comments.
Go ahead.
I'd like to speak, please. Lawrence
Yes,
Smith.
Lawrence. Yes, Lawrence, go ahead.
Has anyone with authority looked over the architectural drawings that the applicant has presented? We've only heard about one place where the soil is not suitable in his opinion. Are there no other places on there other than that spot that this building could be built?
Mr. Ubler or Mr. Sacken?
There is another location. I'd have to pull the garage back about 100 feet, cut down about 75 trees. And I don't see where that would, that's of no benefit to me
I
whatsoever.
think it's too close to the nature.
Are the locations it could
The
be built?
Well, I think it's too close to the nature.
It may possibly be too close to the nature preserve. I
because there
don't
are
know.
holes.
But that has not been explored or verified by any authority? It's this board's
No.
obligation to check into or have the applicant see if there are other locations where it could be built. Now, you just give us one choice, and I'm asking if anybody in authority has checked this out for other locations. I think it should be checked out.
Well, Paul, could I ask you or Laura, you mentioned that would be too close to the nature conservatory. Why do you believe that to be the case?
Well, that's a, because you have to have-
We're having difficulty hearing Laura. Maybe Laura should come closer to the computer.
Yes, please.
Well, the nature preserve is an area that all of us and our neighbors have too.
I'm sorry, I'm still having difficulty hearing. Can you maybe sit right next to Paul and speak slowly so everybody can hear?
Yes. The nature preserve is something that all of us know, and where we developed here is that there's rules by the DNR that you have to abide by. And some of that ruling is that you can't build anything within 50 feet of the nature preserve or 100. But we didn't measure out at one time, and it is closer in the area that Paul was just talking about.
My question would be, is it 50 or 100 feet? Do we know?
It's suburban farm zoning.
Is it suburban farm? Yes.
You're open.
So
Okay,
do we know
Mr.
the answer, whether it's 50 feet or 100 feet?
I believe it's 100 feet from the nature preserve.
Mr. Chairman, Lawrence Smith again. I'm going to ask, we ask for professional advice on this question of mine. Are there other applications or this place that could be built?
Duly noted. If we could get an answer to that, it would be, it would help the board to understand the situation and how we have to rule or should rule. Can we do that?
So is the board asking almost for,
I'd like to go back to
sorry, Laura, go ahead.
Why, Mr. Smith, would you restate the question again for the applicant?
In cases that we decide on things like this, obligation of the ZBA to try and not do things that are possible elsewhere. So my question and my comment is, has this situation been looked over by someone in authority that this accessory building could be built elsewhere other than the place where the applicant is asking for it? In other words, I realize what he's asking for, but is it possible to be done elsewhere and not have a variance?
And would you,
I think our building department could determine that, or if we have to get an architect or legal counsel, then we should figure it out, and it should be noted for this board to make a proper decision on the whole situation.
and for example, Lawrence, would you add that, like, if they came back with soil samples that said it should not be built there or could not be built there? And is it too close to the nature preserve? Those kind of things, right?
Yes, I think it needs to be explored for us to be prudent in making a good decision.
And when you say authority, you would mean like an architect, the builder, an engineer, something of that nature?
Yes, I mean, if the building could be built elsewhere within the rulings of the SF district, so many feet away from everything, et cetera, et cetera. He did mention a septic tank. Obviously, that would be one of the reasons. But if there's another spot where the septic tank's not an issue, or the bad soil is not an issue, or something else is not an issue, then we should be notified that this building could be built elsewhere.
Okay. So do you understand our request now, Mr. and Mrs. Hubler and Mr. Sacken?
I think yes, I do. It's really two things that may assist the board. One is a report or an opinion of some written opinion stating whether or not there's another place where it could be built in light of the nature preserve, and two, possibly some type of soil sample report as well. Is that correct?
That would satisfy me. Would you be satisfied, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I'm just asking about the whole piece of property behind his house. I mean, the ordinance says to be comply with the ordinance, it has to be behind the front of the house. And I'm asking, is there another place behind the house that it can be built except the location that's been in question?
Okay. We understand that then, right, Mr. and Mrs. Hubler and Mr. Sacken?
Mr. and Mrs. Hubler, do you have any comments regarding that?
Who is that professional expert?
Yes, before we go to that though, I do want to bring up those 19. Yes, I'd like to go back and revisit the 19 images that were provided. And
Wait, I'm sorry.
I don't believe what was.
I don't mean to cut you off, but we were talking about one particular issue, and I want to make sure you guys understand what the request is, and you do understand that, correct? What Mr. Lawrence Smith is asking for?
Who is the professional expert?
Somebody speaking, I can't hear him. No, I think Mr. Hubler asked for who is the professional expert, and I would say that probably the board would leave it into the Hubler's discretion to get an expert that he believes, that you guys believe is an expert per se, and for the board, I would assume to review that person's credentials. Would that be accurate?
Yeah.
Yes, I believe so. And I think Mr. Smith would agree with that.
You're unmuted.
Yes, I would agree, unless Mr. Davis might have a comment right now.
Yes, Bob Davis here. I would like to remind everybody that the Zoning Board of Appeals has an obligation to examine other possible alternatives that do one of two things: that eliminate the need for a variance, which is the preferred result if you can, and to minimize the extent of the variance that is required. So in examining this issue with a potential expert, you want to be in a position where you either, exclude all other alternatives, or you get a report that says, well, maybe there's a blend and the amount of variance can be lessened. And that's always the preferred alternative to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with granting the least amount of a variance necessary to carry out the goals and objectives of the applicant. If there's a complete alternative, then obviously a variance isn't needed. If there's a partial alternative, then maybe the extent of the variance sought is not required. And that's what we're talking about here.
Okay, Mrs. Hubler, did you have some comments about the pictures you wanted to address?
I have a question on who is this professional expert?
The
Paul,
applicant,
I think
Bob, hang on a second. Attorney Davis here. The Zoning Board of Appeals, nor the legal counsel, nor the township is going to advise you as to who to hire and what expert to hire. It's my understanding that there are a couple issues going on here. You need an expert to confirm the developer's position that the soils in a certain area are unsuitable for any development. Second, you need an expert to confirm that the only viable location is the location that you have selected by way of a variance because of other issues related to the property, the protected areas, and whatnot. So that's an expert that the applicant needs to decide upon. The township and the ZBA are not going to advise as to what kind of expert that should or shall be.
And then I would add that I assume that it could be one expert per issue. It doesn't need to be one expert that addresses both issues, depending on what people's specific expertise are.
That could
I think
be true.
like Mr. Davis said, we're going to look to you to provide the information, and then we're going to have to make our decision based on what you present us. Is that okay? Understand that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, moving on, if that's okay. I think Mrs. Hubler had some comment about the pictures she wanted to make.
Yes, I'd actually, if somebody else doesn't have it, I'll bring the document up and I'd like to walk through because I don't agree with what was said. Most of those buildings are, maybe there are some that aren't in Addison Township, but I believe that they all are in Addison Township. And also, many of these are, right in front of the home and very visible from the road as well. So I would like to review that because I don't think what was stated was accurate or fair. I am going here to pull the document up.
I think the comment that you're talking about is related to comments I made about these 19 photographs that you took from street level. I took each of those properties that had addresses on them, of which 2 did not. And I went to the Oakland County Property Gateway, which is a public website that shows aerial photographs of each of these properties. Before I go on, I want to make sure that we understand we're not talking about a garage. We're talking about an auxiliary structure. And just as
Which
you
a lot
have
of the pictures did have auxiliary.
We need to do it one at a time, okay, please?
We can go through them, in order if you like. But we can dismiss 3 or 4 of them pretty easy. They're not in Addison Township. All the properties on Rosie Drive, of which there were 3 or 4, are in the village of Leonard, and they're not covered by Addison Township zoning laws. So they don't add or subtract anything from your case.
Okay,
Some of the
I'm
properties,
opening the document up.
okay. Photograph number 3 on Lake George Road.
Could whomever started the meeting change it so that I can share my screen, please?
I don't know how to do that.
Pauline started this, I think.
Yeah, you can right
think
click on Paul Ubler's name.
I don't think we,
Click and you
folks,
can,
I don't think we should be debating these photographs at this juncture. Why doesn't the applicant respond to the position stated about the photographs? And that document will be accepted and will be reviewed in the deliberations of the ZBA.
Okay.
well, I do want it stated on record because I don't think completely what was said was accurate. A lot of these buildings are in the front yard, and also they're an auxiliary building. They're not just garages as well. There are some that are very close here in our neighborhood. They're visible by the street, where our structure wouldn't even be visible by the street. So I want it duly stated that I think that needs to be taken into consideration also.
Well,
All right, the board will look forward to your submittal and rebuttal on all those issues, and you can establish to the board which properties are in fact in Addison Township, and all of your other disputes. That'll become part of the deliberations and part of the record.
and your proposal has been admitted to the record, and we'll, as board members, we'll all review them and come to our own conclusion about them with after you get to make your comments. One last thing, the board members, I'd like to ask them all one at a time if they have any more questions or comments after. So Jay, do you have any comments?
No other comments.
Eric?
No comment.
Tony?
No, not anything more.
Okay. Philip?
Not at this moment.
Okay. I have nothing further. Unless the applicant has any more comments, I'd like to move on to the public hearing portion of the public comment portion of the meeting.
I would like to speak at this juncture.
Yes, Bob. Yes, Mr. Davis, that would be appropriate. You could go ahead. You can make
Okay.
your comments.
Okay, I want to make sure everyone is able to hear me. So I want to thank the Zoning Board of Appeals for the handling of this matter, and I also want to thank very much the applicant and the applicant's attorney for the way we're handling this matter. This is a completely new record. This is a completely new hearing. This is a completely new presentation to this ZBA. We have worked with the applicant and the applicant's attorney to make it clear that all of the prior dealings on this matter before the ZBA are void and gone. This is a new record. This is a new hearing, and you have you are to consider all of the information presented as being presented for the first time. And I thank everybody for that cooperation. Addison Township never wants to be in a position where there's any form of flirtation or otherwise that we haven't provided an applicant with a fair and equitable and due process hearing due to audible considerations or otherwise. It's just not good. It's not who we are, so we're doing this again. Now, with that having been said, I remind the ZBA, and you know how I feel about the ZBA. I feel that the ZBA is an important, if not the most important body in the township government structure because it's judicial by nature, and that you have to make a deliberative decision based on the record that you are presented. And the record that you are presented is everything you've been hearing, everything that is submitted, and the comments that we may or may not hear from the public this evening. And that becomes your record. Why is the record important? As we all know, that if a decision of the ZBA is final and not appealable within the township structure, but is appealable to the circuit court based on the record. So if there is an appeal of your decision, it's based on the record. And we also know by case law that any decision you make with respect to the variance has to be a factually and detailed supported motion, embodied into the motion itself, the factual basis for your decision. And so I would ask that we proceed to the public hearing and that you then conclude this matter and deliberate and wait for this additional information that you've requested, and we will reconvene and make a decision at a subsequent meeting. Is that fair enough?
It's okay by me.
I appreciate those comments. My question would be, in what timeline would the board like the jubilers to be able to submit the requested information?
Normally, the board meets the following month to deliberate on the matter. The next meeting would be November 12th, I believe. Does the applicant believe that would be sufficient time to present the information to the board before the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, then. So let's proceed. Let's proceed to the public hearing.
Okay. So, all right. At this time, it's 6:48 p.m. and I'd like to open the meeting to a public hearing and ask for public comments from anybody who is in attendance at the meeting. I see two other names here on the screen. So if I see a name Ed. Does Ed have any comments for the board?
Bob, no, you don't. I think you guys have done a great job reviewing everything. I do appreciate it. It's a very learning experience, and I do. Mr. Hubler has got his homework to do, and I think it's going to be well done. I wanted to thank everyone there.
Okay, thank you, Ed. I see a Jim on the screen. Does Jim have any comments for the board in the public hearing portion of the meeting? Jim, do you have any comments? Okay, I hear nothing from Jim. One last time. Okay, well, in that event, I believe it's appropriate.
Bob,
Yes,
I would like to make a comment, not as a member of the board, but as a resident of Addison Township.
yes, please go ahead, Jay.
Again, not as a member of the board, but as an individual resident of Addison Township and a neighbor of this property that we're talking about, the closest neighbor, and in fact, the only neighbor that would be able to see this structure when the leaves aren't on the trees, that along with the resolution made by our homeowners association supporting Paul and Laura's intent to want to build this building as the closest neighbor, again, that to this structure, I have absolutely no objections and totally support what Mr. and Mrs. Ubler would like to build. And again, I'll be the only person other than that will be able to see this building for a few months of the year when there's no leaves on the trees.
Okay, duly noted. Okay, again, are there any other public members of the meeting, public members that want to speak? Okay, hearing nobody, I will close the public hearing at 6:51 p.m. All right. Okay, I think at this time, I'd like to note to everybody that, we've concluded our public hearing and that our deliberative meeting where we make a decision will be held on November 12th at 6 p.m. And there won't be any additional public hearings or anything of that nature between now and then. And if the ZBA members would like to visit the property, is that okay, Mr. Ubler?
That's fine.
Do we need to call you ahead of time or anything?
Well, so you have a better understanding on where I want to place it, that would be helpful.
Okay. Great. Okay, so board members, if you can, please call Mr. Ubler ahead of time. Okay.
I would just like to make one other comment about the timing. I'm sure Mr. and Mrs. Ubler will do everything in their ability to get those reports in a timely fashion. Anecdotally, a lot of us may have experienced in our own lives that right now it has been very difficult to hire architects or engineers or people in the kind of home construction business. So I just want to reserve the right in the event that they make a good faith effort to try to hire somebody, but frankly, everyone is booked up and it may take a little longer than they would like, that we reserve the right to request an additional month's time. Again, the hope is that for that not to be necessary, but it may be out of the Ubler's control if all the other experts are not available on short notice.
The township will work with you in that regard.
Please let us know as soon as possible so that we don't post a meeting and have to undo it. Okay, that being said,
Okay.
we can move on to the other items on the agenda, which would be other business. Any correspondence received by the board that we should bring to everybody's attention? Hearing nothing. We'll move on to the zoning board reports. Okay, hearing nothing then. I'd like to move on to the report from the Planning Commission liaison, Mr. Smith.
Planning Commission is kind of in limbo right now. We have no pending cases. We have no meeting this month.
Okay. That looks like it concludes our agenda for the evening. If like to make somebody can make a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
And do I hear support from anybody?
I'll
I'll
second.
second that.
Support from Philip Marshall. If we could have a voice vote on the motion. All in favor, aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes. That would conclude our meeting for October 8th, 2020. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you too.
See you next month.